I am Robby T. I live in good old Fargo, North Dakota. It is going to get cold. It's like 20 degrees today, hence me and my winter shawl, I guess you can call this thing. But today we get to talk about winning the war in your mind, winning the war in your mind. I'm not going to look at the questions for a while, so feel free to drop them in there, but I will not be getting to them for a minute. And feel free to type things in there if you want to just chat as well at some point. We need to start here, friends. We are in some interesting times. I think the best analogy is for all my real estate friends. We are in some, I don't want to say troubling, but they're definitely dark times. You see, we are transitioning out of 2 years of what I like to call a fake market. If there's anything that you want to name or write down today that I think would be valuable, is this transition from a fake market back to a normal market. And in that transition, here's what I'm consistently seeing. One, the game is harder than it was. The reality is, in the fake market of yesterday, the one that was called by, or that was created and caused by the convergence of so many random forces, like millennials delaying home buying, and then COVID changing the behavior. And Ryan Serhant says it best: COVID was a billboard to own your own home. Along with underbuilding homes post 2007, 2008 for the better part of a decade, because builders were decimated. All these things hit the exact same time. You layer into account Airbnbs became a heck of a lot more prominent. People have options for things to do with their homes. Tight inventory, crazy, stupid demand. And oh, by the way, did I mention that the federal government literally handed out billions upon billions? I think it might have been close to trillions of dollars. And the Federal Reserve pumped a ton of money into the system. All these things led to a fake, crazy market. And here's what you all should write down. Here's what we know about fake markets. Fake markets are filled with one common feeling. It was absolute irrational exuberance. That is a term that is used by economists and people in economics to describe when people are literally buying anything for any price. And for us in real estate, right, for basically 2 years, people were willing to buy a house at any price. They did not care. My favorite example of this, if you want to write this down, is that if a house met 80% of someone's criteria in the fake market of yesteryear, what would happen is I would go write on an offer on that house within hours and write at 20% over asking. And let's just be real, that's not good. That's not healthy. But we need to recognize what happened in this fake market, because things were so easy. There was so much FOMO, fear of missing out, for any of my older friends in the room. There was so much FOMO that people were acting this way. If anything, we had to talk people out of doing something. But here's what I saw happen. This is the biggest thing that is affecting people right now, and it's affecting your pocketbook. I almost guarantee it, is that the real estate market of the last couple of years, you didn't have to remind anybody of why they wanted to buy a home in the first place. I'll say that one more time. You didn't have to remind anybody of why they wanted to buy or sell a home in the first place. That almost never happened. You see, sales, I hate the term sales, right? I actually like the term influence, because I actually don't think any of us are actually in the sales industry. We are in the service industry. Rather, in normal markets prior to 2020, we would consistently have to be influencing people to win at this ball game. Influencing people looks like this: people getting cold feet and you reminding them of why they needed to do something in the first place. But here's what's so scary, is there's two types of people in this webinar today. There's those that started real estate after COVID broke out. And after COVID broke out, we have been in a fake market ever since. You have no idea what it's like to influence people. Literally no darn clue. you're having to learn something from scratch. But there's another group of people. It's people that joined the game prior to 2020, whether it was 19, 18, or 20 years ago, it doesn't matter. And you know, in a normal real estate market, influencing people is the name of the game. It is a separator between those that create and convert business from those that die out. And here's the problem for the last 2 years. Here's what we've seen is that you didn't have to influence anybody. I'll say it as it is. The last 2 years, you could fog a mirror and sell homes. Here's how I know. I have a friend that I ran into the sauna last night, and we were talking about what he's doing for work. And I asked how his family's doing, all that good stuff. And he tells me his dad got his license, real estate license, and was doing it part-time. And that's almost always an indicator of someone working a full-time job, selling 4 to 5 homes on the side. Only tends to happen in super glamorous, easy markets. Sure as heck. Guess what he said his dad's probably going to do? Stop. Why? Because the game is tough again. That's what we're going to talk about today, friends, is we are moving from an environment that was too freaking easy into one that is normal and semi-difficult. The analogy I would like to say is we were all playing basketball on a 6-foot hoop, and we all thought we were LeBron James, or for those of you that don't like LeBron, Michael Jordan. I know there's some Michael Jordan fans out there. We were playing basketball on a 6-foot hoop, and we thought we were good. And guess what happened? The hoop was raised back up to 10 feet. That is normal. When I go look at the markets that we're all in, almost anywhere right now, we are in a normal real estate market. But friends, it hurts. It's painful. It feels slower. It feels more difficult. And it's because you're going through a reconditioning process away from stupid, asinine, didn't have to motivate anybody, to, oh my goodness, I have to do my job again, which is, one, find out what is motivating people. This is what I call the North Star of a real estate business. One, find out what's motivating somebody to make a move. What is it that they're running from or running towards? 2, you have to speak truth. You have to be a truth teller with people. You have to be willing to tell people about maybe their misunderstandings or their misconceptions or their asinine ideas about real estate. For all of us out there right now that are in real estate, it is undoubtedly the fear that this is 2007, 2008 all over again, which it is not. We haven't been handing out money to people that don't have jobs. There's income verification these days that did not exist leading into 2007, 2008. So you have to, 1, find out what's motivating people, 2, speak truth. And then 3, we have to be really good at storytelling and helping remind people when the going gets tough on why they wanted to do something. We have to remind people what was motivating them to begin with. And that's not possible if you didn't find out what's motivating them to begin with. If you never took the time to sit down and find out what is the key core piece, the things that they're running from or running towards, when they see interest rates go up 0.5% and they get cold feet. If you don't know what's motivating them, you don't know anything at all. This is the key, my friends. We have to absolutely 100% be changing our game. It is getting tougher. We have to get back to influencing. Influencing is learning truth, speaking truth, and storytelling, and creating an optimistic path to help people get what they want, because they can absolutely do it. It's that simple. Start doing it. Now, I'm going to be doing a whole boot camp about lead conversion and influence in December. We could check that out later. But we need to tie this back to mindset, winning the war in your mind. You see, this is what I've seen happen. In this shift, when things got tough, this is what I think most of us can relate to. Number 1 is we feel like we're having to do more reminding of people. This is more of a people game than a running game. Our skills matter again. And friends, you either don't have the skills or you are rusty. Just call it what it is. You are rusty at influencing people. That's number one. In other words, we feel like we're outside our field of competence. Number two, we have seen sales evaporate. We have seen a shift in almost every single market where we're seeing about 20-ish% less homes being sold. The way I would describe this, if you want a visual of it, is the fake market. There was 100 fish in the sea and there was 10 fishing boats. So if you want to draw a circle, right, and draw 100 fish and 10 fishing boats. In the market we're currently in, there are now only 75 to 80 fish, but there are still the same amount of people doing the fishing. There are still 10 fishing boats or fishermen out there trying to catch those fish. That's where we're currently at, and friends. The numbers simply say there is less food on everybody's table. Now, everybody's feeling this a little bit differently, no doubt about it. But the reality is almost all of us are feeling and having less income in right now than we were a year ago. Almost no one is hitting the goals right now. We're falling short on goals. That's where we're at. Number three, the third thing that's happening right now is you got the great old news media who's putting media out there that is scary as heck. It's scary in your mind about the recession. It's scary about inflation. It's scary about international turmoil, whether it be Russia, Ukraine, other things. And not to mention the media headlines are saying things like, oh, the housing market's crashing, it's plummeting, because headlines saying real estate prices are down 0.8% aren't sexy or glamorous. You see, this is what I've seen happen is in the last probably 6-7 months, I've seen people separate in two different groups. It's those that are winning the war in their mind. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What are the things that you can be doing to win the war in your mind? And I definitely hijacked the title of a fabulous book by Craig Rochelle. I'll share some of the thoughts today about Craig Rochelle's book. But I'm also seeing another group of people that are undoubtedly losing that war. It's probably some of you today. You don't feel as energized. You feel more scared. You're a lot more nervous. And that's okay. That is absolutely okay, because I've felt those things too. Anyone says they haven't, they are lying to you. It is okay. I think one of the biggest freaking problems in the United States or in culture is us suppressing emotions. Actually, I'm going to rip on this for a minute. One of the biggest things I teach my coaching clients, and I like to talk about, is generally there's two types of people when it comes to emotions. We have what I call the truthers. This is anybody that feels an emotion and believes it's the absolute truth. And the problem is that emotion can be misleading you. One thing I know about our emotions is a 1 or 2 feels like a 10. What I mean by that is something that will inflict harm of 1 or 2 in that moment feels like a 10. And you all need to realize that your brain is genetically hardwired. It is conditioned to keep you safe. Your amygdala becomes overactive. When you study psychology, what happens is fear makes us fight, flight, or freeze. And the problem is that when we are in fear mode, when we're afraid in those emotions, we aren't seeing things clearly. Things become unbelievably murky. We become very short-sighted. Some of y'all can probably relate to that because your incomes go down. And let's just be real. If there's one simple thing about everything I've talked about for the first 18 minutes, is there's a hell of a lot of triggers today that are scaring people. There you go. That's any note. Lots of triggers today that are scaring people, whether it's wanting to buy a home or working in real estate, doesn't matter. There's a lot of triggers. That's where we find ourselves, is trigger after trigger after trigger. Now, I said that there's two types of people when it comes to emotions. We have what I call the truthers. Like I said, they're the people that believe, oh my gosh, the world's going to come to an end. It's the people that think, oh my goodness, my business is down 20%. I'm doomed. And then you have the other side, the polar opposite. It's not the truther. It's not the person that believes their emotions. It's the quite opposite. It's a person that completely suppresses and denies their emotions. They act like their emotions have no validity at all. They push it down. And friends, if you want to make yourself sick, go and do this. You want to make yourself physically sick or mentally sick, go and do this. It's one of the worst things you can do is suppress your emotions. You see, I have learned, and what I've learned through counseling and what I've learned through psychology and coaching and helping people with limiting beliefs is we shall not fully believe all of our emotions, nor shall we suppress them. Rather, we need to explore them. For lack of a better term, you all need to be Dora the Explorer. You need to explore your emotions. You need to have the courage to say, man, I'm feeling anxious about this market. I wonder why that is. You see, what I've noticed is if you're unwilling to explore your emotions, you will find ways to distract yourself from either pushing your emotions down. You go play video games, drink, do alcohol, look at porn, whatever the hell it may be. You go do something to shut your mind off from exploring that stuff. Or if you're the truther, you do the same thing. You're so afraid. Go watch a ton of Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever it may be. A lot of people are avoiding the conversation about what are my emotions trying to tell me. And here's what I've learned from people when we have a lot of emotions like this is sometimes there's validity to our emotions. Something is scary. When your income is down 20%, it is scary. There's no doubt about it. I also believe we have to go and explore, well, why is it scary? And I think a lot of times what it comes down to is you'll start asking yourself questions and realizing, man, I'm going to have to change how I'm playing the game if I want to get back to where I was. You see, this number one thing, the first thing that you all need to be doing, the first takeaway to win the war in your mind is you need to become an explorer of your emotions. And friends, sometimes this goes deeper for you. Oh, goodness. I can talk about this one. Sometimes you got to go deep into old emotions. You see, there's a really beautiful book, one of my favorite books about our minds, and it's called Soundtracks by John Acuff. I think I'm saying that right. Soundtracks. And soundtracks are simply this idea that we have stories we tell ourselves, and these stories help predict how we react to different things, how we react to different moments. Our stories and our soundtracks are the things that we're consistently thinking over and over and over again. And this piece, the thing I've seen with people that generally win the war in their mind is they tend to embrace a victor mindset, not a victim mindset. And I am not talking about people that have been victimized in a horrendous way. Okay. And for some of you all, by the way, just be very, very clear, this might mean you need to go and get a counselor, see a psychologist, talk to a friend, somebody you trust, a coach. It doesn't matter. I think one of the strongest things that you can do is get help. Just be very, very clear about this. If you have been a victim of something really, really terrible, or if you have things that you just can't explain, or emotions or things. I know for me, mine was anger. And I was an angry human, and I did not realize it for a really, really long time. I was blind to it. And I'm going to spare you the whole story behind why I had anger. That story will come out some other day. But I had a lot of suppressed anger in my life, and it came out at people. And I needed help. I had to see a counselor and a marriage counselor. And friends, I can tell you this is that nothing is more freeing than understanding the soundtracks that exist in your mind. Because what happens is if those soundtracks don't serve you, they're like a prison. They keep you encapsulated. They keep you stuck. Now, For some of you, you're not going to need a counselor to envision or walk through some of these soundtracks. There's actually some very simple questions you can be asking yourself to explore your soundtracks. I'd like you to write these down. Number one, the first question you can be asking yourself when you're telling yourself a repeating story or soundtrack is simply, is it true? Is it true? Again, almost always with these things, we have to explore them. And oftentimes what you'll realize is that story we've been telling ourselves is not true, and we need to do the work. I had 3 core stories that, frankly, up until recently, I was telling myself. One was that I was not worthy of unconditional love. And friends, what we know about people that don't feel worthy of unconditional love is, man, we seek it out in a whole lot of unhealthy ways, whether it's recognition, acknowledgement, affairs, whatever it may be. We seek out validation when we don't feel unconditionally loved. And I internally did not feel unconditionally loved. That was my soundtrack. I could not feel unconditional love. Number 2, the other soundtrack I had in my mind was I could not trust other people. I could not trust other people. I had to do it all myself. And what I'll say about all this is all of us have different stories that can create these stories and narratives in our mind. And almost always they become our truth for a reason. But rarely are they actually fully true. That's why you have to explore them. I had things that happened in my life that made me question, from my upbringing, whether I was worthy of unconditional love. So I did. In question, I didn't think I was. I thought I had to qualify for it. Number 2 is there was things that happened where I reached out for help from people that I loved, and I didn't get that help. So I learned I couldn't trust other people. So I thought I had to do everything myself. And then number 3, the other story I consistently told myself was the world was bad. It was out to get me. Bad things are going to happen. Bad things are around the corner. Prepare for it. Now, what's really interesting about these 3 things is that I had to start asking myself, are they true? And this came through counseling. It came through a ton of reading. I read the book, Winning the War in Your Mind. I read soundtracks. And what I realized was these stories weren't entirely true. There was pieces of it. I didn't receive unconditional love from certain people. I could not trust some people. And yeah, there are some instances where the world is really heavy and painful and sad. But then I'd ask myself another question. The second question I want you to write down when you have soundtracks to explore them. Number 1 is it true? Number 2 is, does it serve you? Does it serve you? Paired with number 3, is it helpful? Does it serve you, and is it helpful? And when I started to explore these, when I asked myself these questions, what I realized was me believing internally all the time that I wasn't worthy of unconditional love was not serving me. It was holding me back. I was seeking attention in all the wrong places. Here's a really good example. This is a funny one. And I think I've worked through this now, but I want to talk about it real quick. Is for about 1.5 years, I've been going to the gym. Pretty darn consistent. I'm the strongest, most fit I've ever been. And man, I still got that dad bod. We're shedding those pounds finally, but I got that dad bod, but we're getting there. And what I realized was when I first started, a piece of it was like when I wanted to, not to 1.5 years ago, but years ago when I wanted to get fit, it was because I wanted other people to tell me I looked pretty. I was seeking attention seeking, right? I wanted validation. And that all stemmed from not feeling loved, unconditionally loved. There was nothing out there that could feel enough for me because I wasn't ever allowing myself to feel unconditionally loved. So I started, whenever I'd work out, I was like, I want people to tell me I look good. And here's what's funny is I am the strongest I've ever been. And I don't give two shits. I don't look at myself in the mirror. And here's what's really funny is almost nobody said anything. I think that's why seeking out validation can be so scary is you're probably not going to get it. And it's probably going to be unhealthy. And you probably didn't need it. So for me, I had to start envisioning, is this true? Is it helpful? Does it serve me? This leads me to my next piece is I had to start changing the soundtrack in my mind. And here's what's really cool. Of course, having a counselor help unpack this was helpful. Having really difficult conversations because y'all, like the things I was going through was just suppressed stuff from when I was 16 years old that I just never explored. And one thing you should know about suppressed emotions is it almost always impacts the brain and you quit maturing in that respect. In some ways, I was still a 16-year-old, y'all. I was a successful real estate influencer, I guess. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I impacted people all the time, and I've created really successful products and helped people. But internally, there was moments where I was a 16-year-old kid because I had suppressed my emotions. I failed to explore this. So I had to change my internal narrative. And I had to change my soundtrack. And this pairs with something I started doing actually during COVID. I kind of started all this, frankly. So I'll give you the things I did to fix it, how I changed my soundtracks in a moment. Just another story real quick that will maybe kind of help give you all perspective of winning the war in your mind is when COVID broke out in March-ish of 2020, for all of you in real estate, what we saw happen was everybody was scared to death of what was going to happen. Way more scared long-term, way more intense fear than what we're feeling now. Overnight, we saw, I believe it was about 50% of our coaching clients all cancel. Because I had no idea where the market was going to go. And then I had no idea what was going to happen. So overnight, I saw 50% of my income evaporate. And then of the remaining coaching clients, we cut their bills down for 2 or 3 months down to 50%. So overnight, my income dropped for the next 2 to 3 months with no idea what was going to come by 75%. Now, what's really funny is that almost always I've seen people make change in almost one of two ways. Very, very simple. One, something so scary or painful happens, it causes you to rethink your perspective. It's why that person who has a heart attack gets all fit. It's why that person who goes through a really nasty divorce becomes a far better person and husband. You go through some shit. The world slaps you alongside the head and you start looking at things differently. You see, when things are fat and happy and easy, when things are good, we don't reevaluate. Well, could I be doing this differently? So that's number one, when something major happens. Number two is doing something minor over and over and over again for years. But almost always the people that do that are compelled by a vision. They are compelled by some visualization. They are compelled by some fear or some feeling or some visual that motivates the living heck out of them. Something that feels to them internally like a major thing. You have to, if you want to change, either and I will beg this of you, make the changes before things get so painful. Or sometimes the role will come along and give you a painful thing. Well, friends, a lot of you all right now, this is the pain. This is across the face you all needed. And I can relate because mine was basically March of 2020, April 2020. Tell my wife our income's down 75%. I don't know where the world's going to go. I literally have no idea what's going to happen. I'm nervous right now. We need to cut all our expenses. I did two other things, though. I happened to be reading a book called Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, which if you haven't read, I would highly suggest. It is kind of thick. It's a long book. There's a whole chapter about sex that you can completely ignore. It's pretty outdated in my opinion. But there was something that was really, really impactful in my mind. And it was something known as subconscious priming. Now a lot of people call it priming. I want you to write that down, priming. And y'all, you need to realize that walking into this, I was like, this stuff's all bullshit, right? I'd been that person that watched or read the book, The Secret. I was like, man, this stuff's like all junk. Only dumbasses go and do this. This is just like crazy stuff. And that was what I thought reading into it. But again, what had just happened, I lost 75% of my income. I was in a much different mental state. I was much more receptive. I wasn't feeling as good. So I said, screw it. I'm going to take this to heart. And I started priming myself every single day. And I can say that since March of 2020, April 2020, every single day before I go to bed, and when I first wake up in the morning, I prime myself and I literally say to myself the words that I'm growing and expanding in. For me, it's I'm growing and expanding in love, energy, peace, high-level energy, faith and spirit, perspective, gratitude, humility, perseverance, persistence, tenacity, and there is about 80% more. I'm going to spare you all from it. I'm not saying this to say that you all need to take my words and put it into your life. What I'm saying is, have you sat down to create the intentional words that you want to live by? And now that I've been doing this for a couple of years, I've been looking for, well, what impacts has this had? Well, first off, what I started to do, I was meditating as well a lot during this time to quell the anxiety. And during one of my meditations, one thing that just came to my mind that just stood out was I needed to be a light in the darkness. And what that came to be was when I did that, this was like a day or two after priming of just meditating, I needed to be the light in the darkness. What I realized was, man, light shines the brightest when it's dark out. And what I connected was, man, if I'm feeling this way, how are my other real estate friends feeling? How are people that follow me, know me, how are they feeling? And again, we're all triggered right now. We're all nervous. It's not fun and sexy and dandy like it was. So I took that and I was like, well, I need to find a way to do everything I can to bring value to people during these scary times. I needed to do everything I could. So I got on as many podcasts, and this was just my route, right? As somebody who's in the coaching industry who helps real estate companies and sells products and ideas. I went on every podcast I could. We started hosting webinars. We needed to be the light in the darkness. My question for you all is, are you all being the light in the darkness? One, to yourselves, and two, to others. Because I didn't start seeing the light for others until I started seeing that light myself. Hell, it was dark, y'all. But I started telling myself those stories. And here's what the science, right? Because I hate stuff without science. I hate it. It drives me nuts. It's one of the things that pisses me off about self-help. And the book, The Secret, I think 80% of it's just straight trash and garbage. And the reason I think that is, you do not make $1 million by writing a check to yourself, like they say in The Secret, and just sending in the mail and it comes back to you and you get $1 million. You don't get a red Ferrari by putting it on your vision board and just showing up in your driveway. No, the science behind this, but what I'm going to teach you. There's something in psychology known as the RAS, RAS for short. It's the reticular activating system. And you see, all priming or your soundtracks or your internal messaging is your conscious ways. Well, if you're choosing to prime yourself, it's conscious messaging to change your subconscious, your reticular activating system. You see, the RAS, if you've never heard of it, tells us that our brain is a filter, and it is filtering in and filtering a ton of things out consistently. Now, let me give you a really good example. So simple that will help you see this in day-to-day life. If you go buy a new vehicle, let's say you go buy, I don't know, a Toyota Prius. I bought a Toyota Prius someday that I got T-boned and then it got ruined. But let's say you bought a Toyota Prius. The next day when you go on the road, after buying your Toyota, what do you see on the road everywhere? Almost all of you are probably giving two answers. One is other Priuses and two are other Toyotas. This year we bought a Lincoln Navigator. Friends, I had never seen a Lincoln Navigator, never put 2 cents to it. Now I see them everywhere. Now what's interesting about that is, to us it may feel like there are more of those cars on the road the day after we bought any, but that is just simply not true. The reality is your brain found that information unimportant. Therefore, it was consistently filtering that out. Think about all the stimulus we take in every day. Y'all, you need to realize our brain is not built for this shit. It's not built for this world where we move so fast. We see so many things. We get so many messages. It's not built for this. Well, kind of is, but it wasn't built to consume all this information. So what it does is filter so much of it out. I want you to think about, let's just go back a couple thousand years. Our understanding of the world was the little tiny corner of the couple square miles that we would potentially travel. The stimulus we would take in was unbelievably minimal, almost no noises, almost no visuals. It was simple. Look at the world today. Y'all don't just get to hear me say these words. You get to see it in real time with other people around you, with backgrounds, with things. Variety. The world is unbelievably complex. There's so much information, and our brains, to adapt, filters things out over and over and over again. But here's what's cool is the story about buying a new vehicle shows us that we can change our filters. You see, that's what changing your soundtrack is. It's what priming is it's changing what comes into my mind and what stays the hell out. I like to define this. The way I like to describe this is you all need to be building a moat around your mind, a moat around your castle, and you need to be building the drawbridge to let the good guys in. Build the moat to keep the bad guys out. You see, when you're all done with this today, some of y'all will be motivated, you'll love this, you'll be like, I'm gonna go do some of this stuff, and then you're gonna get on Facebook and you're gonna be demoralized, you're gonna see something sad, you're gonna see something in the news, something bad is going to happen. And the simplest truth I've learned about successful people is they go through bad things too. But they've done something differently. I was listening to a really great podcast. It was Shaun White on the Ed Mylett podcast. One of my favorites. If you haven't read his book, The Power of One More, definitely get out and do it. But Shaun White talked about how he gets so excited for every competition, or did, I should say. I think he still does stuff, because he said either way he would win. In his mind, he would either win the competition or he would learn things about what he would need to do to win the next time. He simply changed his RAS. He changed his internal dialogue. He changed the story he told himself. For some of y'all right now, you feel like you're not winning. Is that the right story? Is that true? That's something for you to go explore. You see, here's what's really cool is you can be changing the stories you're telling yourself, and it simply starts by you consciously choosing to change the narratives, the stories, the ideas we believe in. Every day I wake up now, I've added to my words, the ending words right now are, I am worthy of unconditional love. I can trust other people. The world is good. You see, it started with me exploring the stuff I didn't want to explore for so long. And I'll be honest, a part of me was almost afraid to explore it. Because I thought, am I going to lose the drive? Because I've been successful. I'm going to lose that. And y'all, I'll tell you this, that drive is more clear than ever before. I feel more at peace than ever before. And there's something freeing about now doing it, but not needing it. Before I needed it, thought I needed it, and I didn't. Because I thought it would provide the unconditional love. I thought the world was coming out to get me. The reality, y'all, is shit, I've won the lottery. I am wealthy and healthy beyond most people's dreams. And I'm lucky as heck, and I'm blessed. And I see that now. And that gives me more energy to share more good, be more good. It's why when this market shift happened, and it started to happen about 4 or 5 months ago, and in the last month or two, we started seeing the churn, right? Kind of like COVID, but nowhere near as crazy. Eric and I sat down, we just looked at each other like, it's be the light time, be the light in darkness. It's why 50 plus of you are listening to this right now. We'll probably have another 250 to 300 people listen to this afterwards. It's being the light. But it starts with you, 1, exploring your feelings. 2, changing your soundtracks through priming. Priming is simply you telling yourself the ideas that you want to see more of. And what happens is it's just like buying a new car. Your subconscious mind allows more and more and more of that in, and it tunes the other stuff out and out and out. Your brain's that simple, y'all. It's how it's adapted to this crazy world. The question is, what are you going to do to take advantage of it? Now, this is not something that you'll flip a switch. This takes time. But here's what I noticed is when I made these switches, when I started telling myself different stories, is I started to see the world differently. I started to see things differently. I started to envision different moments. I've now added 3 more words, by the way. And I always do things in 3s. I don't know, I'm a weirdo. But I did 3 more things, added 3 more words. Because I could not receive unconditional love because I didn't think I was worthy of unconditional love, I could not give it. So another word I've added, another phrase I've added is I give unconditional love because I couldn't trust other people. I didn't act in trustworthy ways. So the second thing I added is I am worthy of people's trust. And then the third thing I added was I am good. I'm worthy of unconditional love. I can trust other people. The world is good. I give unconditional love. I am worthy of trust, and I am good. You change these messages, and friends, what happens is you become them. It takes time. It takes alignment. It takes action. It is not easy. Imperfect action is far better than perfect inaction. Some of y'all are hearing this and you're like, this doesn't need to be done. Nothing will help. It won't do it. Y'all, you're wrong. I used to be that person. I used to think this stuff don't work. It is one of the best things I've ever done to build a moat around my mind, to keep the bad guys out, to let the good guys in. Last piece, I want to end on one more story. Y'all, you need to wake up to the world that we're all in. There's no such thing as absolute truth. One of my experiences I'm about to tell you will illustrate this the best. You see, someone I love dearly and I were walking down a sidewalk, and we were going to a football game. And this person and I are walking down the sidewalk. And this is one of those days, kind of like this time of year in North Dakota, Minnesota, anywhere that has snow. It's like gross, swampy. There's snow in the grass. It's also wet and icy. It's just nasty. And man, you can't wear your Jordans until it's actually all frozen, or else they're going to get ruined. But this person I love and I are walking down the sidewalk, and driving on the sidewalk is one of those carts that you've probably seen during a football game that they cart somebody off the field with when someone gets hurt. And this cart's coming towards us, and it becomes very clear, like there's one of two options. They could either pull off and drive around us, or we could part like the sea around Moses, and I go left, and this other person I love goes right. We could do this and go around this person. And the obvious choice is, if they drive that cart in that swampy, gross stuff, the thing gets stuck. It's just so much easier for us to part like the sea. So as we're walking towards this cart, the person driving the cart is supportive of the other opposing football team. They were actually the home team. And we walk past and we part like the seas. We both step in that gross, swampy, disgusting, icy grass. And then we step back on the sidewalk. And what's so fascinating is this person and I were both dressed in very weather appropriate clothes. We're both wearing boots. You're welcome for the North Dakota, Minnesota accent coming out there. We're both wearing our winter coat jackets. And I remember stepping back on the cement, and the very first thing my mind went to was, I'm grateful I wore my boots today. This other person who I love that stepped back on the sidewalk, the first words that they externalize, so imagine what their internal dialogue said, was, what a fucking asshole. What's so interesting is, if we take our experiences out of this, what happened in the most logical terms is two people were walking on a sidewalk. They had to move out of the way of a cart. They stepped in crappy, swampy grass and stepped back on the sidewalk. One person's experience was met with, gratitude. The other person's was met with resistance and frustration and anger. We didn't go through anything different, except for the fact of the stories we tell ourselves. You see, victims find a way to play victim. Eric and I say one of the worst things you can do in your business is hire victims, because when things get tough, they get tough. They get nasty. They get mean. I think for you all, what we need to be doing is we need to be consistently examining our emotions. We need to have the bravery and courage to discuss emotions. In our workplaces, we have to make talking about these things normal, common, brave. Because what for so long we've done is we repress this. And what happens when we fail to do this is we lose the war in our minds. And then we're all like, what the hell's happening? You don't want to win the war in your mind. It's simple. Explore your emotions. 2, change your soundtracks. And do it by changing the stories we tell ourselves. Keep the bad guys out. Build that moat around your mind. What are the stories you're telling yourself? And y'all, successful people that seem to bounce back from the hits quicker, all they simply do is they have soundtracks that are more advantageous than yours. They're more fulfilling. And it's not blind ignorance, right? Shit happens. Things are heartbreaking. Things are tough. I think that's another thing in success is people are blind to like, oh, just have an optimistic mind. No, it's got to be optimism paired with action and realities. But I'll tell you this is that almost always it's the optimist who beats the pessimist. It's despite this, I'm going to find a way to win. I'm going to learn from this. Right now, are the stories you're telling yourself optimistic? On a final note, earlier I had you draw two circles. One was the fake market. What was the market today? In the fake market, there was 100 fish for 10 fishing boats. In today's market, there is 75 to 80 fish for the for the 10 fishing boats. But we're moving into a marketplace, y'all. This is just what happens, where the amount of fish is likely to stay the same. So 2023's market and beyond, what's likely going to happen is there will be 75 to 80 fish, but it's going to drop down to 5 or 6 fishing boats, fishermen. Y'all, I think y'all need to get excited. Y'all know the stories I'm telling myself right now is now it's separation season. That's what I'm excited about. Warren Buffett always says, y'all don't know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. Y'all, the tide's going out, and we're seeing some really messed up, weird ass looking swimwear or some really unique body parts. Separation season, you get to separate yourself. You see, I'm a firm believer that it's actually easier to win when it's hard out. It's easier to win when things are tough, and it's tougher to win when things are easy. It was tougher for people in that fake market to separate themselves. Now things are tough. It's easier for you to separate yourselves. What are you doing to be the light in your own mind? And what are you doing to be the light to other people? There's going to be 2 experiences in real estate. Well, probably 3. One is people are going to come out of this thriving and get their unfair share in 2023. You're going to have those that just barely survive. And then you're going to have those that die. And you're starting to see the signs of the people that are dying. It's the story I heard in the sauna yesterday. It is that person who's got that part-time job, so they're not lead generating. The question you'd be asking yourself is, are you being the light in the darkness? Telling y'all, you go do this. You go change the story you're telling yourself. This crazy ass thing happens. You change your life. All right, y'all. Win the war in your mind. Get out there, do good, be the light. Any questions that y'all have, drop it in there. I'm going to go check the Q&A. Let's see here. Good stuff. Glad you like Heather. Light shines the brightest when it's dark out. It's just so true. So true. I wish I would have known it earlier. Get out there, be good, y'all. Y'all have a huge opportunity at hand. Share this with people on socials. Share it with people that you know, love, trust. But most importantly, be good, be the light to yourself. Love y'all. See ya.